Hello, and welcome to Powerful Places Podcasts. I'm your host, Gary White, and today we have an interview with Celia Gunn in her home in Somerset, England, about a First Nations protest movement called Idle No More. Well, I'm standing here this afternoon with Celia Gunn. We heard a talk from you the other day about a Native American or First Nations movement called Idle No More. Can you tell me about that?
Oh yes, I was very thrilled to come across this relatively new Native American protest movement that it was while I was doing my research for this talk I'd been invited to do. The talk subject was the sacred landscape of North America, and I decided to talk about the response of the people to the land and the people from the land. And I was just going to talk primarily about the work I'd done with Native Americans in British Columbia and what I'd learned from them about their earth-centered spirituality when I came across this Idle No More movement, and even the name fascinated me because I guessed right away pretty well that this was a very profound change of attitude that had arisen. I mean, Native Americans were judged as idle because they hadn't made anything of themselves in their land. They had been just living on the land and with the land for so many millennia, and therefore the settler nations judged them to be idle. They just sat around, as it were, and which was terribly unfair because they had left such a little imprint on the land in many ways, and so Idle No More said something profound was happening, and I found out that these 4 ladies, very well-educated Native American women from Saskatoon in Saskatchewan, Canada, had apparently been given tobacco and eagle feathers by women elders and said, enough is enough. There's so much degradation happening to the lands that not only ourselves but the entire planet is in danger, and it's time to be silent no more. And that became Idle No More. So I looked on Facebook and I searched Idle No More on Facebook, and I found pages were starting to appear that you just had to like, and then you got notified about what was going on with this movement. And it began very simply. The first thing that I came across was something that really tickled me, which was in a mall in Edmonton. There was this celebration of Christopher Columbus Day, I believe it was, or Christopher Columbus anyway. Mm-hmm. And there was the big ship, I believe it was the Mayflower, his ship, was it? Oh, that was a pilgrim. No, it was a pilgrim ship. I don't know what his endeavor. I'm not sure what his ship was called, but anyway, there was a model of his ship in the mall, and suddenly there were these Native Americans there in the mall making a huge circle right around the ship. And on the bridge leading over that you could walk towards it was another group of Native Americans with drums, and they just began to drum, and the Native Americans did a round dance completely around the ship, mm-hmm. and shuffled round, and all the people in the mall just gathered on the upper levels watching this and filming it, and this is of course how it got onto YouTube, and they just sang and danced and then all hugged each other and left. And this was a very early flash mob event that people get notified on Facebook or by email to gather, make their statement in dance, in song, and then melt away again.
There's actually an app that you can put on your cell phone that notifies you of Idle No More events.
It is now. Well, that is wonderful.
I think this is fascinating, this combination of our most modern communications technology with First Nations.
Yes. Ancient meets the modern, as it were. Talk about ancient, not the people, the tradition. The ancient tradition meets something, a brand new technology. And I think this is, again, just like this upsurge of this movement. I mean, I know there's been protest movements before, and there probably always will be, and some of them have been very powerful, but I have a sense that together with the social media networking, that this can have an impetus that maybe has huge ramifications for the positive for us all.
Yes, yeah. I think that the social media is the way that we are going to tell each other stories.
Yes. The telling the stories, of course, is so important, because that's what we are as human beings. We tell stories, and that gives our lives meaning. It's true too. And also, I think that the mainstream media is lagging behind in this respect, because the events and the news and the information that gets out on social media happens so swiftly, and of course isn't controlled by the vested interests who own most of the newspapers and control what goes in and how it is presented. Social media is just there and it's raw, and I'm not going to say that it's accurate all the time. Of course it's not. I mean, if you look at Wikipedia, you just know that it's always somebody's opinion. But at least the things that are going on, they're sort of especially to do with injustices or things that the government or corporations don't really want us to know about or realize right now. The information can get out and get spread around and passed around really swiftly.
One thing that I learned from your talk was the effect of the tar sand extraction and what that's doing to the environment, which is one of the issues that Isle Namore is dealing with.
Yes, yeah. It's shocking when you first learn about the Athabascan tar sands in northern Alberta, which, to my understanding, are also not the only tar sands in the world. I believe Russia is about to do something similar, and Saskatchewan has done or is doing a similar development, and it's an utter shock when you first realize this has been going on already. It began, I believe, 27 years ago, the exploration, and I mean, I've only come across this information about it fairly recently, and it is, as I'm saying, it's horrendous when you first are confronted with what's already in place and what's happened to what is actually the largest boreal forest and wetlands area in the world in northern Alberta is now devastated and toxic forever, unless Mother Earth chooses to fold it inwards and put something else there in due course, which of course will take millennia. But it's an area the size of the United Kingdom pretty well, that is now producing the most dirty fuel that we have ever known. It's the most toxic method of extraction of oil and the most costly to the environment and to us. And in fact, you could only have oil from the Athabascan tar sands if the price of oil is about $100 a barrel. And the only way for that to be viable is to push up
the price.
And when did the price of oil get pushed up to that level? After the Gulf War. Is this the reason we have a Gulf War? I'm not sure, but it's a big coincidence, if it's a coincidence at all. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist in my heart, but I also know that things go on behind the scenes, you know.
Yes.
I liked it, for all it's horrendous, if you go online and Google tar sands and get to see this terrible thing that's going on that not even many Canadians know about, at this point anyway, just remember that perhaps this is a black cloud with a silver lining, because this has had the kind of power for the native people to stand up and say, now, enough is enough. Because of the bills that have been tried to be pushed through in Canada. The Canadian government is trying now to push through all these bills that effectively, in essence, remove Native American sovereignty And this is quite simply, they're saying it's time to assimilate, they've got all these other reasons and all of this and so forth, but effectively, if you look at the reason for the Gulf War, you could also look at these bills as being about removing Native American sovereignty so that the pipelines can be pushed through the land, terribly leaky pipelines, and there's a leak 2 or 3 every day, so you've got all of these disasters happening all over the place where these pipelines are. Arkansas Mayflower one back in April, March the 30th, I think actually, March 30th this year, destroyed a whole community, is a terribly appropriate example, a tragic example of a whole community destroyed by a leak of this very material. And but the silver lining, maybe this has had the power to draw people together enough to say enough is enough.
Well, let's hope so.
Yeah, because we know there's other sources of energy out there. There's the ones we know about, and then there's the ones that have been the free energy, Nikola Tesla and so on, that have been bought up and then buried because the corporations that have that kind of run the world right now rather than our governments, they have their vested interests and they cannot make money from these other methods that they then bury.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Celia, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and look online and see what is happening in Canada, and as you say, potentially in many other places in the world.
That's right. I think my final word would be is very much what Idle No More proponents say. It's a youth-driven Native American movement. I think there's a big awakening happening amongst the youth of today, which is a very key issue as well, that they are saying enough is enough too. And what you can do as an individual, there's so many things you can do. You can support them, or you can work to preserve the integrity of your environment in your own sphere, in your own backyard. And don't think that by looking after your own backyard, you're not doing anything. You're doing as much as you can do. I mean, the issues of fracking are another one. There's you will mention the Fractured Land film that's coming up. These are all dirty methods of us getting our energy when we have very viable alternatives. And it's time that the corporations release their grip on the global economy and let us go forward in a healthier way for the environment and for our children and our grandchildren.
Thank you.
Go to www.powerfulplaces.info and look for Idle No More, a movement with a mission. You will find numerous links to websites about the issues we discussed.